2026, a doorway opens, a gateway into the heart of biblical prophecy, and the world is invited. This July 8th through 11th, 2026 in St. Louis, Missouri, the Eschatology of the Prophets Gateway Conference brings together some of the most respected voices in fulfilled prophecy studies, featuring Dr. Don K. Preston, Dr. William Bell Jr., Zach Davis, Pastor Michael Miano, Tim Martin, Pastor Steve Magua, and more guest speakers to be announced. 4 days of revelation, 4 days of powerful teaching, 4 days that will reshape how you understand the prophets from Genesis to Revelation. Only 100 tickets are available, and when they're gone, they're gone. Secure your spot today at www.thewellchurchstl.com/events. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Step through the gateway. More information is available at www.beyondcreationscience.com. July 8th through 11th, 2026, St. Louis, Missouri, the Gateway Conference. Enter the conversation. Experience the revelation.
They came against the Holy One, voices raised, defying the sun, standing strong in their own might, blinded hearts that chose the fight. Flesh begins to fade away, judgment falls, no place to stay, still they stand, but not for long. Truth has come to crush the wrong. Riding where they stand, by the sovereign hand, eyes dissolve, tongues decay.
Well. Welcome. Good afternoon. Happy new week to you. Blessings in the name of the Lord. I know it's already Wednesday, but it's still a new week, and I hope that you are blessed. How did you enjoy that new song? It is called Rotting Tongues, Zechariah 14:12. Rotting where they stand. Rotting where they stand. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I just made that song, Robert Cruikshank, just a few minutes ago using AI. So don't nobody accuse me of being a musician. But nevertheless, I will communicate the message as best as I can. So, Dr. Lois Magua, it is good to see you. Can I have some feedback, guys, on the song? We are going to be looking at rotting tongues. Rotting tongues. What is the deal with Zechariah? What is the deal with Zechariah 14 and verse number 12? Let me open that text up here on my screen. That way we can kind of have an idea of what we are talking about, and then we will get into the exposition, the teaching about Zechariah chapter 14 and verse number 12. Well, here it is. Zechariah 14 and verse number 12 says, very enigmatic text. Zechariah 14:12, and this shall be the plague with which the Lord will strike all the peoples that wage war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they are standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. Yikes! Oh my goodness! I mean, what is this? Some people say, at least I grew up hearing, this verse could never be fulfilled until now. Because in Zechariah's time and throughout all of history, we did not have the weapons, we did not have the capability to produce this kind of effect. But now with nuclear or nuclear weapons, depending on how you like to pronounce it, now we see this in Hiroshima. We see this with the A bomb. Could it be that Zechariah 14 is about to be fulfilled in our time? Well, we are going to be examining that this very afternoon. So here we go. Let me put up a PowerPoint here. I'm going to go a little bit, and then I'm going to play that song again, because I think that song is just fire. There are some things that you hear and it's just fire. But anyway, rotting tongues in mouths. What is the deal with Zechariah 14:12? Now, we already read the text a few minutes ago, and I will read it again, just the text. We are only going to deal with this one verse. We are only going to deal with this one verse in this short teaching. Zechariah 14:12 says, their flesh shall rot while they stand on their feet. Their eyes shall rot in their sockets, and their tongues shall rot in their mouths. Now, it is not a secret. I don't think it is a big reveal when we say that Zechariah chapter 14 is popularly and widely considered to be about the end times, the day of the Lord, the second coming judgment. So when I say that, nobody's going to say, no, that cannot be. I think this is the common standard understanding across all of Christianity, across all the ages, even amongst the people of Israel in the Second Temple period. But the question is, what was Zechariah talking about? How is it that their flesh rots while they stand on their feet? How is it that their eyes rot in their sockets, Dr. Robert Cruikshank, and their tongues shall rot in their mouths? Wow. Now, Robert Cruikshank, who is an expert with Zechariah 14, I would really want to recommend that you look up his teachings on the Burros of Berea podcast site. He says, yet the same people tell us that Jesus could have come at any moment. He could have come at any moment for the last 2,000 years, while saying that this could not have been fulfilled for 2,000 years. When mankind has nuclear capabilities, it doesn't add up. Wow. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So anyway, let us get into this teaching, right? I'm not going to waste your time. I want to teach you why Zechariah said that, what it means, and what you ought to understand about it. So back to our presentation here in Zechariah 14:12. Now, what is going on with Zechariah 14:12? Well, I have 6 things that I want to tell you right off the bat. Number 1, Zechariah 14:12 is using apocalyptic judgment language. He is not making a medical diagnosis. He is not making a medical description of what is happening to people. It's apocalyptic judgment language. That's the first thing. Secondly, this language that Zechariah is using is called is reflecting a covenant curse motif. That is a vivid portrayal of divine judgment that is quite common throughout the Old Testament. The focus of Zechariah is on total, humiliating destruction, especially of the flesh, that is the body, the eyes, that has to do with the perception or the awareness, and the tongue, which has to do with speech, boasting, or rebellion. Moving on along. Now, we do see similar language being used throughout the Old Testament. For instance, Psalm 137 verse 6 says, let my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. Obviously, the psalmist is not expecting you to read that and take it literally. It is a speech that is supposed to communicate the cessation of lies, the cessation of boasting, the cessation of wicked speech. Ezekiel chapter 3 verse 26, the tongue is made mute as judgment. The tongue is made mute as judgment. Then we have Lamentations 4:4, the tongue cleaving due to distress. This is metaphoric language. This is not supposed to be taken in a literal biological sense. And then we have this passage which I'm actually going to explore here in a minute. James chapter 3. James is going to present to us a very, very vivid imagery of the tongue as a destructive force. The consistent idea is that God judges people through the very organ that they use in rebellion. So go with me to the book of James. I'm going to put it up here on the screen in a few moments here. James chapter number 3, and I want us to look at what James says about the tongue, because this will help you to understand what the apostles would have understood Zechariah to be talking about. Okay, so let's look at it very quickly. James chapter number 3, taming the tongue. Taming the tongue. Now, not many of you should become teachers. Please understand, this is Zechariah's target. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, not subject to judgment, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the wheel of the pilot directs. Please note the pilot. The pilot controls the ship using a rudder, very small instrument. Now, so also the tongue is a small member of the body. It's a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a fire. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. Now the word here, you can see a footnote. The word is Gehenna. The word is Gehenna. So that's a wrong translation. But anyway, for every kind of beast and bird, of reptile, sea creature can be tamed as and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or grave pine produce figs? No. Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. So there's James's commentary on the tongue. So he says the tongue is an untamable member of the body, and because of the tongue, judgment was coming. I want to remind you, without necessarily going there, of the very, very vivid and extraordinary parable in Luke chapter 16 called the rich man and Lazarus. If you remember that parable, Jesus says there was a rich man and there was also a poor man named Lazarus. The rich man used to eat sumptuously every day. He was dressed in purple and fine linen. He was a priest. He was a high priest. He was receiving sacrifices, food every day, and he just lived the luxurious life. But then there was a poor man at the gate. And I'm just kind of shortening this story. It is a story about the high priest versus the poor people of Israel. The poor person was seated at the gate. He was full of sores, which represents sin, and the dogs were licking his wounds, and he was just begging for the little morsels of food that would drop from the table of the rich man. But of course, he did not get it. So by and by, the poor man Lazarus died, and he was carried away to heaven by angels, and there he was comforted at Abraham's side. And then we see the rich man also dies after that, and now we are shown Jesus concocts this story, this imagery that is supposed to communicate the same type of things that Zechariah is doing. He says that the rich man, being in Hades, being in anguish, being in torment, looked up and he saw Lazarus at the side of his father Abraham. And he begins to cry out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus, let him dip his finger in water and cool my tongue. Many people miss that. The rich man is not concerned about any other part of his body. He's not burning his toes, his back is not burning, his body is not burning. He's only concerned about the fire that is upon his tongue. He wants it to be cooled down. And the imagery there and the message that Jesus wants to communicate to the high priest of Israel in his time is that your false teachings, your deceptive teachings, your misleading teachings are going to bring you eternal damnation, eternal suffering. That is a message there. That is a message there. So now when we go back here to our passage, which is which we were looking at in my PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to put it up on the screen once again. We have reached at the point where we said that when the Bible uses the language of tongue clinging to the roof, tongue being muted for judgment, tongue cleaving due to distress, and now we saw James telling us that the tongue is a fire and it will cause a great fire, it will cause the whole forest to burn down. The consistent image is that God judges people through the very organ they used in rebellion. So let's continue now. Now, tongue rotting in the mouth in Zechariah 14:12 equals or is vivid prophetic imagery of divine judgment, especially against arrogant or rebellious speech. It is consistent with the broader A&E cast traditions. Now, A&E stands for Ancient Near East. So, in other words, in the Ancient Near East, the Mesopotamian, the Sumerian, Akkadian traditions, this language is so common, you'll be amazed. I am actually going to show you exact quotations from the Old Testament period, not from the Old Testament Bible, from the Old Testament period, from all the communities that surrounded Zechariah and Moses and the Old Testament people. And I want you to see the kind of language they use, so that if you continue to say that Zechariah is talking about nuclear war, then you must also say that all these communities were all anticipating nuclear war. So let's go into this. Let me show you some of these things. So these are I'm going to show you 6 examples of exact speech, obviously translated into English, from ancient Near Eastern curse texts. The first one is going to come from the Neo-Assyrian treaty curses. And this particular one we are looking for is the Esarhaddon or the Seafire type parallels. Now, this comes from the succession treaty of Esarhaddon in the 7th century before Christ, 700 years before Christ. So this is the time of Isaiah. Okay, so this is even before the time of Zechariah. So, and I quote here, quote, "May disease, exhaustion, and fever consume your flesh. May they strike you down. May your body waste away." So in other words, as part of the curses of that particular treaty, they were saying, if you break this treaty, may this happen to you. Okay, so may disease, exhaustion, fever consume your flesh. May they strike you down. May your body waste away. Another section of that same treaty includes speech-related judgment. It says, may they make your mouth and your lips dry. Now remember, this is not the Bible. This is literature from the ancient Near East, communities that surround the ancient Hebrews. So may they make your mouth and your lips dry. May they deprive you of your speech. He's talking about the gods. They believed in multiple gods, and they were saying, if you break the covenant, may the gods make your mouth and your lips dry. May they deprive you of speech. The key insight here is this: the drying of the mouth equals loss of life, loss of vitality, and loss of covenant standing. This is very close conceptually to tongues rotting in the mouth. The organ of speech is judged. Okay, continuing. In the Seafire Treaty, which is Aramaic and it comes from the 8th century BC, so it's even older than the one we just looked at. This one is often compared by many scholars to the Deuteronomy curses in Deuteronomy 28 and Deuteronomy 27. And this is what it says, quote, "May his flesh," the breaker of the covenant, "may his flesh be eaten away. May his body waste away. May his eyes fail. May he be struck with incurable disease." Now, I want you to pay close attention, and I want you to think about this. Have you ever heard this statement as you were studying the Bible, as you had the word being preached? Have you ever heard somebody being said of somebody? This man, he died when he was 120 years old. He was strong. His strength had not failed, and his eyesight had not failed. His eyesight was perfect. Have you ever heard of such a statement? You should have. You must have, because this is what we are told in Deuteronomy chapter number 34 when Moses dies. You are told that Moses was not a covenant breaker, in spite of the fact that the generation that was with Moses faded away, wasted away, died in the wilderness. Moses died full of strength, with good eyesight, with clear, perfect health. Why? Because you're being presented with the fact that Moses was a covenant keeper. He was faithful in all of God's house. Whereas his countrymen were unfaithful, and therefore they perished in the wilderness. None of them made it, except of course for Joshua and Caleb. So this language is very common. This is not at all referring to anything to do with atomic bombs or nuclear bombs or anything at all that we imagine with our Western mindset. So this is from the 8th century BC. Let's go to another one. Actually, let's go to the key insight of that particular treaty that was made in the 8th century. Now, notice that the same pattern that you find in Zechariah, 3 things are being targeted in cursing the person who is breaking the covenant. The flesh decays, the eyes are failing, and the body is wasting. This, you will find, even as we go on, is almost a template for prophetic judgment language throughout the Near East, throughout the ancient Near East. Let's go to number 3. Now, this is what is called the Hittite treaty curses, the Supi Lulima and Mursili tradition. Now, this is from the 2nd millennium BC, the 2nd millennium BC. So 2000 BC. That's what it means, 2000 BC. So this is even older. This is even older than the 2 that we've already looked at. So now we are going all the way to the time before Abraham. Now it says, and this is quotation, if you do not keep these words, may the gods destroy your flesh. May they strike your head, your eyes, and your mouth. May they make you unable to speak. Now, are these Hittites, long before the time of Abraham, are they prophesying about nuclear war in the 21st century? Because if we say Zechariah is prophesying about nuclear war, then we must say every time we see this kind of language being used in that culture, in that time, then they must all have been anticipating what it would be like in the 21st century. Nobody would make that ridiculous claim, right? Let's continue. Now, these Hittites, we are told, they had another variation to this tradition. And in another quotation of that treaty, we hear, may your mouth be paralyzed. What? May your mouth be paralyzed. May your tongue be taken away. The key insight here is the mouth or the tongue is explicitly targeted. Loss of speech is indicating covenant curses, especially for the oath breakers. Do you see the pattern here? This is just common language of that time. In other words, it's like how people today, if you disagree with somebody, if you hear somebody telling somebody off in our culture, what will they say? What are some of the things that we say so commonly, but they are not so common in other generations? Go to hell. God damn you. F you. Up yours. Right? But if you just go even 500 years ago and you say up yours to Shakespeare, up mine what? You see? This is just language in a culture is used in a particular way. And Zechariah is using language that is common to his time. Okay? Now continuing, let's go to number 4. This is Mesopotamia. So this is where Abraham actually comes from. Mesopotamia. So this is the Mesopotamian curse formula. This is the general royal inscriptions. This is where this is found. The common curse formula found in Akkadian inscriptions reads, may Shamash, their god, tear out his foundation, the oath breaker that is. May his flesh waste away. May his name and his seed disappear. May his mouth be silenced. Here is another one. May the great gods strike him with disease. May the great gods dry up his mouth. May the great gods remove his speech from him. Number 5, Babylonian prayer and curse text. This is from the Surpu Maklu series. From the ritual curse text used against offenders. May the curse seize his flesh. May it consume his body. May his mouth be bound, may his tongue be held. What is the key insight here? What are the Babylonians doing? They are binding the mouth. They're not binding the mouth physically. They are hoping, they are wishing that that person would be unable to speak, would be unable to defend themselves or to call for help. Again, speech is central to this judgment. Let's go to number 6, the Egyptians. Remember, all these are the people who are surrounding the Israelites. Zechariah is writing very late. Zechariah is writing somewhere in the 400s BC, after the Babylonian captivity. But all these texts that we are looking at are all much older than Zechariah, but they're using the same language because this is pretty common language in the ancient Near East. Now, while less explicit about rotting tongues, similar ideas appear in the Egyptian execration text, that is curse language. His mouth is stopped, his speech is cut off, his name is erased. That means he's being silenced. That is removal from existence. That the literal thing is removal from existence. When the person is dead, they have been removed from existence and they have no more honor. They are dishonored. They are cursed. Let's get to our last point here. So what is the connection with Zechariah 14:12? What is the deal with Zechariah 14? Now let's compare with Zechariah. Zechariah says, their flesh shall rot, their eyes shall rot, their tongues shall rot in their mouth. What is he doing? Zechariah is using a recognized ancient Near East curse pattern. Zechariah is intensifying it with apocalyptic imagery, making it very vivid. He is applying it to a covenant judgment. And we will go back to the text in a moment, and I will show you that there is a judgment going on, and Zechariah is simply using the language common to that culture about how the oath breakers are to be judged. So he is not using random language. It is a culturally familiar language. So let's summarize here. In the ancient world, when a king made a covenant, breaking it brought curses. For instance, your flesh will waste away, your eyes will fail, your mouth will be silenced. Zechariah picks up that exact language, he intensifies it, not just silencing, but the tongue itself rots in the mouth. This is a very, very vivid warning, so that the false teacher, the false prophet, can really think about what they are doing and can really think about what the result will be to them. It's not supposed to be taken in a physically, biological, or chemical, literal sense. Rather, God is saying, I'm going to come against you, false prophets. And that's exactly what the Bible says through and through in almost every Old Testament prophet. So, why? Because the same tongue that rebelled becomes the instrument of judgment. Do you see? Do you get the idea? So now, let's go to our text here. Let's go to our text. And let's see what Zechariah says. Now, I'm going to read the whole text now, this time. And in this text, if I go back to the beginning, this is about the day of the Lord. Notice that Zechariah is prophesying about the day of the Lord. This ought not to be a mystery to most Christians. That the day of the Lord is a day of judgment. So it says, behold, a day is coming for the Lord, when the spoil taken from you will be divided in your midst. For I will gather the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. Half of the city shall go into exile, but the rest of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations, as when he fights on a day of battle. On that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley. Now, even though I'm not teaching about that today, please, Zechariah is going to use the same tools of communication throughout his prophecy. Apocalyptic language, metaphors, idioms, and so on and so forth. The Lord standing on the Mount of Olives and the Mount of Olives being split into two is not a physical, literal thing that the readers of Zechariah would have been looking for. Rather, they understand that the Mount of Olives represents the power or the powers in Israel. And he's saying there's going to be two powers. So that if you look at this text, it talks about when he comes, it says that there will be a valley, so that one half of the mount shall move northward. These are two powers that are fighting one another, and the other one will move southward. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach to Azal, and you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come with all the holy ones with him. So the standing on the Mount of Olives is not literal, is not physical. I wish I had the time right now, but I can go throughout the Old Testament. I can show you the Lord coming many times, and his feet standing on Mount Paran, his feet standing on a cloud. It's judgment language. It is when God sends a military force against a particular offending city, this time Jerusalem. So Zechariah was foreseeing what would happen to Jerusalem in his future after the Babylonian captivity. And we know that Jerusalem was utterly destroyed 40 years after the ministry of Christ, based on Jesus' own prophecy, in which he quotes Zechariah chapter 12 in Matthew 24. He says that Jerusalem, he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, and he says Jerusalem will be destroyed completely. The temple will be destroyed completely. So Zechariah is really pointing to the judgment that took place in 70 AD. And of course, there were two mountains. There was the mountain that was being led by the Pharisees, Sadducees. There was a mountain that was being led by Peter and the others. And of course, there was the Romans also. These are mountains. These are authorities, right? And the people of God were able to escape when the Jews and the Romans went to war in 66 AD. So anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, but if you want more details on that, I would definitely advise you to look up Robert Cruikshank's article on Zechariah 14 on the Burros of Berea podcast. Now, verse number 6, on that day there shall be no light, cold, or frost. And there shall be a unique day which is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but at evening time there shall be light. On that day living waters shall flow from Jerusalem, half of them to the eastern sea. And you see this in Ezekiel 47, which is also the river that is flowing from the throne in Revelation chapter number 22. So half of the waters will flow to the eastern sea, which is the Mediterranean Sea, and half of them to the Western Sea. And half of them to the Western Sea shall continue in summer as in winter. So this is talking about the fountain of the word of God, the river of life. And the Lord will be king over all the land. On that day the Lord will be one, and his name will be one. The whole land shall be turned into a plain from Geba to Rimmon south of Jerusalem. Now this language here is the same exact language that we find in Isaiah chapter number 40. There is a voice of one crying in the wilderness. He shall level the mountains. He shall bring up the valleys, and it will all be straight. And this is applied by the apostles, and throughout church history, we know that the voice crying out in the wilderness was fulfilled by John the Baptist. But John the Baptist did not literally bring down physical mountains, neither did he lift up physical valleys, neither did he make any roads, because this is spiritual language about spiritual realities. Okay, so when it says here that the whole land shall be turned into a plain, it's talking about the reality of the kingdom of Christ, where everything becomes straight, perfect, sanctified through the finished work of the cross. But Jerusalem shall remain aloft on its side from the gate of Benjamin to the former gate, to the place of the former gate, to the corner gate, from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses, and it shall be inhabited, for there shall never be again a decree of utter destruction. Please compare that with Isaiah 54. In fact, let me show it to you real quick, just like real quick. Isaiah 54 is saying the same thing, saying the same exact thing. Isaiah 54, and this is about the bride of Christ. Isaiah 54, the bride of Christ. Look at this. It says, sing, O barren one. Galatians chapter 4, Paul applies this to the church. For the children of the desolate one will be more than the children of her who is married. Then he says to her in verse number 6, actually here verse number 5, for your maker is your husband, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel is your redeemer, the God of the whole earth is called. For the Lord has called you like a wife deserted, grieved in spirit, a wife of youth when she's cast off, says your God. For a brief moment I deserted you, with great compassion I will gather you. So he's talking about the gathering of the church in Christ. Now, what does he say about the church after it is fully formed? He says, in righteousness you shall be established, you shall be far from oppression, you shall not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near you. If anyone stirs up strife, it is not from me. Whoever stirs up strife will fall because of you. Because, behold, I have created the smith who blows the fire of coals, produces a weapon for its purpose. I've also created the ravager to destroy. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed. You shall refute every tongue that rises up against you in judgment. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. Their vindication comes from me, declares the Lord. So these texts are parallel to each other. There shall never be a decree of utter destruction against the New Jerusalem, against the church of Jesus Christ, whereas there is a declaration of destruction against old covenant Jerusalem. The very last words of the very last verse of the Old Testament declare this. Watch this. He says, behold, let's begin from verse 5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. Same day of the Lord as in Zechariah. He, Elijah, will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a decree of utter destruction. Now, he says here to whoever he's talking to in Zechariah 14, it shall be inhabited, Jerusalem, for there shall never be a decree of utter destruction. He's not speaking about physical Jerusalem. He's speaking about heavenly Jerusalem when it comes down. He's speaking about the church of Jesus Christ, those who are born of God. Jerusalem shall dwell in security, and this shall be the plague with which the Lord will strike all the peoples that wage war against Jerusalem. Of course, the people that were waging war against Jerusalem were those that were waging war against Jesus Christ and his 12 apostles before the day of judgment came in 70 AD. That's the Pharisees, that's the Sadducees, that's the high priests, and all the false teachers. He says their flesh will rot while they are still standing on their feet. He is not speaking about biological flesh rotting. He is speaking about this. Go with me to the book of Romans chapter 8. This hopefully will help you to understand what flesh is being addressed here. And Paul uses this language all of the time. Look at this. He says there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, right? Now, I'm going to skip over here and go over to verse number 5. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the minds on the Spirit is life and peace. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. Therefore, they will decay. They will rot away. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. Now, is Paul suggesting that the Roman Christians were not physical people? You are not in the flesh? So you don't have physical bodies? No, that's not what Paul is saying at all. The flesh, throughout the scriptures, especially when it is referring to covenantal things, is referring to the mode of the covenant. If you are in the flesh, it means you are in the covenant of the Old Testament. That's what being in the flesh is. And whoever is in the flesh of the Old Covenant is a sinner, because all in the Old Covenant have sinned. They have fallen short of the glory of God. Therefore they will perish. But whoever is in the Spirit cannot perish. Again, it has nothing to do with biology or chemistry. This language of decay is going to be used later on in that same chapter by Paul when he says, let's begin here at verse 18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing. The creature, the ktisis, the new creation, that is, waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. That's the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from bondage to corruption. If you look at this verse in, let's say, King James or New King James, it will talk about decay, bondage to corruption. Let me just take you directly to King James. I think it is. No, King James doesn't use that. Who uses decay? Somebody else uses decay. I can't remember who uses decay. But anyway, Paul does use this language of decay, corruption. For we know the whole creation has been groaning in the pains of childbirth. Not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit, as we groan inwardly, as we wait eagerly for the adoption of sons, the redemption of bodies. So this decay was not a decay of physical bodies or of physical things. It was the decay of the old covenant order. The decay of the old covenant order. It is the wearing out that the writer of Hebrews talks about. Let me see if I can pull up that text in Hebrews to show you what I'm talking about. So if you go to Hebrews chapter number 1 and verse number 8 to 10, this is what the text says. Hebrews chapter 1 verse number 8 says, but of the Son he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. Now watch. And you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish. They will decay, but you will remain. They will wear out like a garment. This is what is being spoken about here. The wasting away, the obsolescence, the passing away of the old covenant order is what is being addressed here. Their flesh will rot away while they're still standing on their feet. Their eyes, how they used to perceive, that will go away altogether. It will rot. That way of seeing things. That's why Paul says we shall see him. We shall know him when he comes. John actually says we shall see him as he is. We shall see perfectly, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13. And their tongues, their lying tongues, will rot away in their mouths. Their rotting tongues will rot away in their mouths. There is none who does right, Paul will say. That's in Romans, once again, I believe it's in chapter number 3. At the beginning, right? Romans chapter number 3, he says about these tongues. Let me see if I can. Here it is. No one is righteous. What then? Are we Jews any better off? Not at all, for we have already charged that all, both Jews and Greeks, are on our sin. For it is written, none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Now watch verse number 13. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no peace of God before their eyes. So these are the people that now Zechariah sees being judged by God in Zechariah chapter number 14 and verse number 12. So, if you have any questions, if you're understanding this, please indicate it in the comment section, because I am now winding up. The angel of the Lord, no, actually, this is the wrong chapter here. Let me see if I can find it. Zechariah chapter number 14. I didn't open the right one. So Zechariah chapter 14 verse number 12. This is what is happening here. Verse number 12. And this shall be the plague. Notice it's the plague with which the Lord will strike all the peoples that wage war against Jerusalem. The Jerusalem that is being waged against here is not the physical Jerusalem. It's the spiritual Jerusalem, the Jerusalem above. Paul does speak about that conflict between the Jerusalem in Galatians chapter number 4. It's important that you see it. I'm giving time for anyone who has a question before I bring this to an end. In Galatians chapter number 4, look at the conflict. Paul says the conflict that was happening against Jerusalem here. Verse number 21. Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? You who desire to be in the flesh. Under the law is under the flesh. For it is written, Abraham had two sons, one by a slave woman, one by a free woman. But the son of the slave woman was born according to the flesh, according to the law. While the son of the free woman was born according to the promise, according to the Spirit. Now this may be interpreted allegorically. These two women are two covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. Now Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. She corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free, and she is our mother. For it is written, rejoice, O barren one who does not bear. Break forth and cry aloud, you who are not in labor, for the children of the desolate one will be more than those of the one who has a husband. Verse 28, now you brothers, like Isaac, are children of promise. But just as at that time, he who was born according to the flesh, their flesh will rot away. He was born according to the flesh, persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit. So the Jerusalems are at war. The Jerusalem above is experiencing persecution from the Jerusalem below. But what does the scripture say? Verse number 30, cast out the slave woman and her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not inherit with the son of the free woman. So brothers, we are not the children of the slave, but of the free woman. So Zechariah is an apocalyptic text. Zechariah is using vivid apocalyptic imagery to describe the judgment of the apostates, the oath breakers, the covenant breakers at the time of the day of the Lord before the old covenant ended. And the old covenant ended in 70 AD for sure. There is no more old covenant today. Therefore, it has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. Now, I have a question that I see here from my friend all the way from Australia. Don Stead says, why did they have to wait for redemption when the Lord returns, as in Luke 21:28, rather than when it happens at the cross? Okay, that's an excellent question, Don. That's an excellent question. Now, redemption cannot happen until the day of the Lord. Okay, so in other words, a day was set, Don, in which all judgment was going to be executed. You understand that part, right? There was a day set. This is when I'm going to judge. This is when I'm going to bring up all the charges against all the sinners under the covenant. Excuse me just one second. Let me just find out what this is. Hello?
Hello?
Yes. Can you speak quickly, please? I'm busy. Okay, they're not speaking. I don't know who that is. So anyway, so judgment was set on a particular day. Jesus paid the ticket before the day of the case. I've given this example many times. when you get a traffic ticket done, when you get charged with a crime done, and that crime is payable, you can pay a fine ahead of time. When you pay the fine, that's not when you'll get released from the debt. The fine is your evidence that the debt is paid, but you are not officially released from the debt until the day that the judge sits on his throne and is presented with the evidence that your crime has already been taken care of. So in other words, even though most people don't realize it, when you get a traffic ticket, because the traffic ticket is usually the best example that I can give, people go and pay the traffic ticket at the courthouse or online. What they don't realize is that on the day that the case is mentioned, which is later, the case will still be mentioned even if you already paid for it. Then the prosecutor or one of the officials of the court will say, Your Honor, this ticket was paid for 2 months ago. They admitted guilt and they paid for it. Then the judge rules that the case is settled. Notice the case was not settled when you paid it. Rather, the price, the sentence was carried out upon the payer when he paid it. But the judge has to declare the legal sentence on the case. So therefore, in Israel, in the Old Testament law, there was a day every year when all sin was dealt with. So that if you had sinned in March, in April, you could present goats and cows and bulls on an ongoing basis. But it is the Day of Atonement later on in the year, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, when all the sins were now then brought to bear once a year. Of course, even with that, they were not like taken away only outwardly. But this was a picture that there was a day of judgment. So that those people who believed in Christ, they were believing. You see, they were believing that Christ has paid the price and that God has accepted the sacrifice, and therefore that on the day of judgment, God will consider them to be innocent and exonerated on the day of judgment. The cross did not take away the day of judgment. The cross ran ahead of the day of judgment in order to provide a way of escape for those who wanted to escape. So the day of redemption is not the cross. The cross is the price of redemption. The cross is the cost of redemption. The cross is the payment for redemption. But that's not the day of redemption. Because the day of redemption is when the case is brought officially, legally, before the judge. And then now the advocate can come and say, I have the receipt here, Your Honor. This case was paid for ahead of time. Does that make sense, Don? I hope it does. So the redemption was not yet consummated until the Day of Atonement. So a good text to kind of look at so as to understand this is Isaiah 27. Isaiah 27 gives this idea. Isaiah 27. And Don, I need you to indicate whether this has made sense. So you notice here the redemption of Israel. This is the topic. The redemption of Israel. In that day, the Lord with his great and hard and strong sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisting serpent. He will slay the dragon that is in the sea. Yes, Thank you, Megs Overcomer. The cross was the means to redemption, so that on the day of redemption, then the evidence will be given. So in that day, pleasant vineyard, sing of it, I the Lord am his keeper, and so on and so forth. So when you come here to verse number 9, he says, therefore, by this the guilt of Jacob will be atoned for. And this will be the full fruit of the removal of his sin, when he makes all the stones of the altars like chalk stones crushed to pieces. No Asherim or incense altars will remain standing. The fortified city will be solitary, a habitation deserted and forsaken. Like the wilderness, there the calf graves, there it lies down and strips its branches. So, therefore, the day of redemption was the day of atonement. So you are so futurists aren't redeemed yet in their own eyes. No. The futurists believe in a doctrine called already but not yet. So they will not say no. They will say, yes, we are redeemed, but it's not yet finished. Just in the same way, because remember, the futurists of today, Dawn, is putting themselves in the shoes of the apostles, which is actually a good direction to start going. They are saying we are like the apostles. Paul was redeemed, but not yet. Paul was redeemed, but not yet. Peter was redeemed, but not yet. Okay? So are they redeemed? Yes, because the cross, they believe in the cross. The price has been paid. But has the redemption, has the check cashed? So in other words, it's like writing a check. Right? Once I give you a check for $1,000 and you know I'm good for it, you have $1,000, don't you? But really you don't have $1,000 yet, because all you have is a piece of paper, a promissory note. Yes? You will not have $1,000 until you go to the bank and you give them the note and they give you legal tender for $1,000. And even then, really you don't have $1,000 until you go and purchase something that is worth $1,000. Right? Kind of like that. Yes, the car was paid for, but the title ownership has not been transferred. What a good example, right? So you go to the dealership, you put down a deposit. They give you the car. Have you paid for the car? Not yet, but I have it. I have it. Well, what happens after 60 months if you have not paid for the car? Well, they take it back. Right? In fact, they will not wait for the 60 months because you're using it up. But that is the bottom. If by the last day that of the loan agreement you have not paid the full price, then it's taken back. But in the case of Jesus Christ, he purchased the whole car. The disciples were possessing the car, but they didn't have the title. I mean, we used to be like them, Megs, right? We used to say we are redeemed, but not quite yet, not fully. So we are waiting for the redemption, but we are looking back to the redemption of Christ. All right, so guys, because I don't want this to spill into other issues, I want whoever wants to come and understand rotting tongues to understand rotting tongues. I want to bring it to a close here. I can always come back for a discussion, just a general discussion of many things. But I will read this one last statement by Megs Overcomer. It says, on Sunday, I had a preacher say in a full packed church that Jesus is yet to come out of the Holy of Holies. And that's good theology, right? That's good theology, because it means that that person is acknowledging that Jesus went into the Holy of Holies when he ascended to perform the ritual of atonement. And it's just that their timing is just a little bit wrong, Megs. But that's very good theology. So I would not really be worried about them too much. I would be praying for them that now they would understand all the other scriptures that tell you when he was to come out. Because if he has not yet come out, then it means the Old Testament is still going on. So, can I play you guys the song again? Rotting Tongues, as we come to an end of our discussion here. I want to play it again. It's called Rotting Tongues. It was written using ChatGPT and Suno. It is in the hard rock metal era. You might like this one. So I tried. I mean, I do like this kind of music myself. So I'm pretty. I like different genres of music. So anyway, here it is. Enjoy, and I will see you the next time. When the song is over, I will just end this session.
They came against the Holy One. Voices raised, defying the sun, standing strong in their own mind. Blinded hearts that chose the fight. Flesh begins to fade away. Judgment falls, no place to stay. Still they stand, but not for long. Truth has come to crush the wrong. Riding where they stand, by the sovereign hand. Eyes dissolve, tongues decay. Nothing left to say. Fire in his breath, speaking life and death. Every word he said remains, while rebellion fades. Eyes that mock now fade to black. No more turning, no way back. Tongues that curse now fall apart. Silence grips the hardened heart. Day of the Lord has come to light. Darkness breaks before his might. All that stood against his name falls to dust in holy flame. Riding where they stand, by the sovereign hand. Eyes dissolve, tongues decay. Nothing left to say. Fire in his breath, speaking life and death. Every word he said remains, while rebellion riding where they stand, by the sovereign hand. Eyes dissolve, tongues decay. Nothing left to say. Fire in his breath, speaking life and death. Every word he said remains, while rebellion fades.
In a world of confusion, where timelines collide and prophecy is often misunderstood, a gateway is opening, a gathering unlike any other, where the voices of the prophets echo once again. From July 8th to 11th, 2026, leaders, teachers, and seekers will converge at the Todd Hall Retreat Center for a journey through the eschatology of the prophets. This is the Gateway to Fulfillment, featuring voices you know and trust. Join Steve Magua, Tim Martin, Michael Miano, Zach Davis, Dr. Don K. Preston, and William Bell Jr., with more to be announced. For 4 unforgettable days, you'll explore the prophetic scriptures, uncover the fullness of God's redemptive plan, and gain a deeper understanding of our fulfilled hope. Seats are limited, so secure your spot now. Register today at the link in the description. Don't just watch prophecy. Step into fulfillment. If you're passionate about biblical truth, like this video and subscribe for more powerful content and conference updates. We'll see you there.